Hello, my name is Spencer Lunsford, and I'm here to tell you about my educational journey that I took here at Full Sail University. One of the first things is I didn't go through the typical education to become a teacher. I went through the School of Business and went through a side door using the alternative certification in order to become an educator in the K-12 school system. One of the things that happened is, as most of you know, if you're supposed to be an educator, you can't run from it. I tried and tried. My parents even told me not to. My mom was a teacher and she knew how much heartache there could be because of how much feeling there is for the kids. And it's one of those things, like I said, you just can't run away from. So one of the things that I used in my Full Sail Action Research project was the use of technology. The students nowadays really don't use technology to its fullest potential, especially when it comes to their education. I should caveat that with the students that I teach. They don't really see how the technology could integrate into their education and to really help them fully understand certain material. One of the things that I was able to do here at Full Sail was to get a better understanding of how research is done, and that was done in our very first class. Learning about what sources are acceptable and making sure that they are critical and that other people have reviewed them and made sure that they have met a certain level of expectation. Now, one of the things that one of the articles said that Norton wrote back in 2008 said technology and mathematics education go hand in hand, so much so that the workplace is actually going to require students to start making judgments based on technology and their understanding of how it can be used in their daily lives in the workplace. So those without basic understanding in these key areas will in the future be either disempowered or misled in exercising their democratic rights and powers within a technologically dependent society. And that's exactly what we've become immediately. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to make sure that we've taken all of that and used it to educate our students as well. One of the other things that came up in my reading of the literature review was the idea that technology for technology's sake isn't good. Technology needs to have a purpose, and that's where my action research took me, was bringing the kids to an understanding of just because it says it's technology or just because it says it's a game that teaches you this doesn't mean that it's actually doing what it's supposed to. Kurz and Middleton concluded that even with a short time of experience with the technologies, teachers are able to discuss and dialogue about how and what the technology can do to aid in students' understanding of mathematics. And that's really where I honed in on my action research, was making sure that I was able to discuss with the students how their education would be affected by the technologies that we would use and the technologies that they would find. The quote that I've used for most of my introductions and abstracts and things is from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and it's quickly become one of my favorites. It says, technology is essential in teaching, learning, and doing mathematics, and has been used in classrooms to enhance mathematics instruction. Students can learn more mathematics more deeply with the appropriate use of technology. Cycle 1 plan of action, it really is the point that the students need to be given tools and need to know how to choose their own tools for when they do become more independent students in the higher education system. You'll see that my instructional goal was that they become informed in ways that they can utilize technology in their education. And then in the actual data analysis, my students were able to find some things and able to evaluate their effectiveness based on, did it actually help them understand the material better, or was it just a click and grab or a shoot 'em game that really doesn't tie together any of the concepts, but it just is a mindless game. We need our students to understand that they need to be actively learning this material. Changing from cycle 1 to cycle 2, I really wanted to make sure that the students saw where a teacher came from and understand that the teacher has specific things that they want you to get out of the use of certain technologies. Once again, I need them to understand the use of technology, but we came at it from a different area this time where they didn't have as much autonomy. I guided them, I gave them a list of certain technologies and supplemental materials, and they were able to utilize those and make sure that they understood why it was that I chose it to be used in a certain way. Here the students were able to really see that there was a connection between the things that teachers are required by law using the new generation Sunshine State standards and trying to tie in the fun of technology. At our school, we have several carts of Apple iPads, and we have to submit our lesson plans so that they can make sure that we're utilizing them in the correct way. Because all too often the teacher can find a game that's just a simple little click here and it answers the question there, and it doesn't really do any kind of deepening of their understanding of the material. And that's what they want to make sure, that we are utilizing this technology. And so I was able to actually get my students to see the types of things that we have to go through and need to go through so that their education is brought into a deeper understanding in mathematics. One of the things that I learned while here at Full Sail was the fact that some things might not be necessarily meant for a certain area of education, but as a teacher I can link it in and explain to the kids how it would work. One of the things that we did in the game strategies class was specifically have to create a lesson based around one of the Facebook games. It was very interesting to see just how much math could be done in the simple game like Farmville. That's some of the things that the students don't necessarily realize that they could be using to help their understanding of the mathematics that they're learning. But if the teacher kind of points it out or guides them to it and then allows for the discussion to really take place, then that learning can be greater. Another one of the areas that I was able to grow in was the use of music. I grew up in a musical household and never really thought about how music can be used in education, using the rhymes, using the rhythms, helping the students to remember formulas. It was just something that I did. I forced myself to memorize things, and some of these students need that extra little bit of a help or a push to be able to memorize the thing. One of the things that I never thought that I would do is be a presenter. And through Full Sail, I've been given the opportunity to actually put together a presentation and then given the opportunity to submit it for acceptance to conferences. And it's something that I can see myself doing now. I never saw myself going for a master's. I was satisfied with getting a bachelor's degree and getting a job and working, and it's nice to see how this coursework was set up to push us farther and to call us to a higher level and make us the best that we can be. I don't know how I'm going to go for a doctorate, but I do know that from here on out I will be more active in conferences and trying to put together presentations so that teachers all across the state, all across the nation can have a bit of my understanding of how I interact with the education of my students.